May 15th, 2026. Time 4:12 a.m. The surface of the Caspian Sea, the largest landlocked body of water on Earth, is dead calm. Suddenly, the radar screens inside Russia's heavily fortified Kaspiysk naval base in Dagestan begin to glitch. No high-altitude targets, no incoming cruise missiles. Then, out of the low-lying sea mist, a low buzzing sound echoes. Before the Panzer Mim air defense systems can rotate, a low-flying Ukrainian FP-2 explosive drone slams directly into the deck of a brand-new Project 22-800 Karakut-class corvette. A massive fireball lights up the Dagestani coastline. For 48 hours, the Kremlin tries to suppress the footage, but the truth leaks. The Caspian Sea, once considered an untouchable deep rear sanctuary for Russia and Iran, is now a raging active war zone. But this strike revealed something far more terrifying than a breached harbor. It exposed a shadow logistics pipeline, a network of 40 highly armed, dark-hulled warships and heavily modified commercial tankers that the Pentagon calls the Caspian Ghost Fleet. A fleet that operates completely off the grid, with transponders permanently disabled, navigating blind spots where Western satellites see nothing but empty water. And if this ghost fleet completes its final 2026 objective, the geopolitical chessboard of the Middle East and Europe will change forever. To understand why the Caspian Ghost Fleet exists, you must look at the map. The Caspian Sea is not an ocean. It is a massive, isolated salt lake bordered by 5 nations: Russia, Iran, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, and Kazakhstan. Under international maritime law, no outside military power, not the United States, not NATO, is allowed to deploy a single sailor here. It is a completely closed ecosystem. For decades, Western intelligence ignored it, treating it as a quiet hub for oil drills. But in 2022, when global sanctions hit Moscow and Tehran, this isolated lake became the perfect loophole. Because it is connected to Russia's internal canal system, the Kremlin can secretly transfer warships from the Baltic Sea right past Moscow through the Volga-Don Canal and straight into the Caspian. By 2026, this lake has become a sovereign, lawless highway. A 1,200-kilometer-long corridor where Russia and Iran can swap heavy armaments, ballistic missiles, and drone tech without a single customs check, maritime inspection, or international treaties standing in their way. It is a maritime black hole. The core of this operation is the Ghost Fleet, a division of 40 specialized vessels that do not exist on public tracking databases. These are not old, decaying cargo boats. The fleet includes Project 22460, Okhotnik-class stealth patrol ships, and civilian-marked bulk carriers whose cargo holds have been completely hollowed out and lined with lead. Why lead? To block the thermal and infrared signatures of what lies inside. thousands of Shahed 136 suicide drones and sensitive ballistic missile guidance components destined for the front lines. These vessels practice extreme operational security. They operate under a tactic known as going dark. The moment they leave Astrakhan or Kaspiysk, their automatic identification systems, AIS, are turned off. They drop off the global map. They navigate using localized, unjammable Russian GLONS military grids. But Russia isn't acting alone. On the southern coast of the Caspian, Iran has built its own mirroring network. At the port of Bandar Anzali, secret Iranian Revolutionary Gore Corps IRGC engineering docks have modified civilian container vessels into floating drone launch pads. This is a tightly synchronized bi-directional logistics machine that fuels two war theaters simultaneously. For years, this arrangement worked flawlessly. Millions of tons of critical military hardware crossed the waters undetected. But on March 18, 2026, the sanctuary was violently shattered. In a covert operation that shocked global intelligence, the Israeli Air Force launched a long-range, low-radar signature missile strike targeting the Iranian naval facilities at Bandar Anzali. Videos leaked on social media showed massive secondary detonations ripping through the harbor. Israel didn't issue a formal press release, but the message to Tehran was clear. Your deep rear is no longer safe. The West realized that the Caspian Ghost Fleet wasn't just transporting weapons to Russia, it was storing them for a much larger conflict. Intelligence reports leaked by the US Fifth Fleet revealed that Iran had been using the Caspian corridor to stockpile heavy anti-ship cruise missiles away from the prying eyes of Western surveillance networks in the Persian Gulf. The Caspian wasn't just a supply line, it was an arsenal. Now, think about the ultimate strategy. Why would Russia and Iran invest billions into turning a landlocked salt lake into a heavily armed fortress? The answer lies 1,500 kilometers to the south, the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most critical energy choke point, where 20% of the global oil supply passes every single day. In a full-scale conflict with the West, the Persian Gulf would become a literal kill zone, heavily patrolled by US carrier strike groups. Iran's southern ports would be instantly blockaded. This is where the Caspian Ghost Fleet changes the rules of engagement. Because the Caspian Corridor is completely immune to Western naval blockades, it functions as a secure, invulnerable backdoor. If a global war erupts, Russia can supply Iran with advanced hypersonic anti-ship missiles directly through the Caspian Sea, completely bypassing the Western naval ring. With an uninterrupted resupply chain feeding their southern batteries, military simulations show that Iran could launch an endless swarm of automated weapons, effectively shutting down the Strait of Hormuz in less than 12 hours. No commercial tanker would dare to sail. Global oil prices would skyrocket to $300 a barrel within days. The global economy would collapse, and the West would have no way to cut off the supply line feeding the fire. So, the final question remains, can the Ghost Fleet be stopped? The May 2026 drone strikes on Kaspiysk prove that the modern rules of war have changed. Long-range autonomous drones have turned an isolated sanctuary into a vulnerable frontline. But as long as the Caspian Sea remains legally closed to the outside world, the shadow game will continue. Neutral satellites will keep capturing empty water, while beneath the fog, 40 dark ships will keep moving the gears of global conflict. It is an invisible war fought with transponders off, where the true stakes are never discussed in public press conferences. Because in 2026, control of the world doesn't just belong to those who command the open oceans, it belongs to those who control the shadows under the radar. This was Trench Waters. If you want the unfiltered truth behind the world's hidden military operations, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and never miss an investigation. Next, we dive deep into the secret electronic warfare grid over the Baltic Sea and how a single signal jammed NATO communications for 7 days straight.